Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Thursday, November 7th, 2024, and you're listening to Alex's News. The high in Riverside today will reach 73.5 degrees with a low of 56.5, so it's a pleasant autumn day. Coming up on Alex's News, we'll examine the impact of the Trump presidency on U.S. relationships with authoritarian leaders around the world. Then we'll look at what the latest Southern California wildfire reveals about the region's ongoing vulnerabilities to these natural disasters. Finally, we'll explore how close humanity is to crossing a critical climate threshold and what that could mean for our planet. Stay tuned for these stories and more on Alex's News. We begin today with an in-depth look at former President Donald Trump's foreign policy during his first term in office. Joining us to discuss this topic is our political correspondent, Ethan. Ethan, can you give us an overview of how Trump's approach to foreign relations differed from previous administrations?
Certainly, Grace. According to multiple sources and expert analyses, Donald Trump's first term as president marked a significant shift in U.S. foreign policy, particularly in relation to authoritarian leaders. Unlike his predecessors, Trump openly praised and developed warm personal relationships with several authoritarian figures.
Can you give us some specific examples of this, Ethan?
Of course. Trump publicly expressed admiration for Russian President Vladimir Putin, calling him very, very strong. He even sided with Putin over U.S. intelligence agencies regarding election interference. Trump also referred to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan as a friend and held historic summits with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, despite Kim's notorious human rights record.
That's quite a departure from traditional U.S. diplomacy. How did this affect the U.S. stance on human rights and democracy promotion?
Well, Grace, it had a significant impact. Unlike previous administrations, Trump rarely criticized authoritarian leaders for their anti-democratic actions or human rights abuses. For instance, he didn't challenge Hungary's Viktor Orban on his crackdown on civil society and LGBTQ+ rights. This approach undermined U.S. efforts to promote human rights and democracy abroad.
How did this affect our relationships with traditional allies?
It strained them considerably, Grace. Trump frequently criticized NATO, questioning its relevance and the financial contributions of other member states. He also withdrew the U.S. from several key multilateral agreements, including the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Paris Climate Agreement. This was seen as a departure from the traditional U.S. role in international cooperation.
What about trade relations, Ethan? Were they affected as well?
Absolutely, Grace. Trump initiated trade disputes with several countries, including traditional allies like Canada, Mexico, and members of the European Union. He imposed tariffs and other trade restrictions, which further strained relationships with these long-standing partners.
It sounds like there was a fundamental shift in U.S. foreign policy during Trump's term. How would you characterize this change?
Experts describe it as a move towards a more transactional and less values-based approach to foreign policy. This led to closer ties with authoritarian regimes and was a significant departure from the policies of previous administrations, which had historically emphasized democratic values and human rights in their foreign relations.
Thank you, Ethan, for that comprehensive overview of Trump's foreign policy during his first term. We appreciate your insights on this complex issue.
You're welcome, Grace. It's certainly a topic that continues to shape discussions about UPS foreign policy today.
Indeed it does. Thanks again, Ethan. And now let's move on to our next story. We turn now to our ongoing coverage of the wildfires in Southern California. Our reporter Chloe is following the latest developments. Chloe, what can you tell us about the situation?
Grace, the situation is dire. A fast-moving wildfire, known as the Mountain Fire, is currently ravaging communities northwest of Los Angeles, particularly in Camarillo and Ventura County. This fire, which began just yesterday on November 6th, has already had a devastating impact.
That sounds serious. Can you give us more details about the extent of the damage?
Absolutely. According to reports from local authorities, the mountain fire has already destroyed dozens of homes and forced the evacuation of over 10,000 people. What's particularly alarming is how quickly it's spreading. In just a few hours, it expanded from less than half a square mile to over 22 square miles. As of late yesterday, firefighters had 0% containment of the blaze.
That's a staggering rate of expansion. What's fueling this rapid spread?
The main culprit is the powerful winds in the area. The National Weather Service has reported wind gusts reaching up to 61 miles per hour, or 98 kilometers per hour. These conditions have led to the issuance of a red flag warning due to high fire danger. However, there's some hope on the horizon as winds are expected to decrease significantly by tomorrow night.
With such dangerous conditions, what efforts are being made to combat this fire?
The firefighting response has been massive. Over 800 firefighters are currently assigned to the blaze, with hundreds more arriving from around the state. They're using a combination of ground crews and night-flying helicopters. Additionally, water-dropping helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft are being used to drop fire retardant on the affected areas.
Are there any other impacts from this fire that residents should be aware of?
Yes, Grace, there are several. Power outages have affected over 30,000 customers statewide, including about 3,000 in Ventura County and 4,000 in Los Angeles County. More than a dozen school districts and campuses in Ventura County have been closed. Tragically, 2 people have suffered apparent smoke inhalation and have been taken to hospitals.
This isn't the only fire in the area, is it?
That's correct. There's also a smaller wildfire near Malibu's Broad Beach known as the Broad Fire. It has burned 2 structures but was at 60% containment by late yesterday.
Chloe, this region has a history of destructive fires. How does this compare to previous incidents?
You're right, Grace. This area has seen devastating fires before, such as the 2018 Woolsey Fire and the 2017 Thomas Fire. These previous fires have had significant long-term impacts on the environment, economy, and social fabric of the communities. They've caused extensive damage to natural habitats, resulted in billions of dollars in property losses, and displaced many residents.
What lessons have been learned from these previous fires that could help in the current situation?
Great question. Experts have identified several key areas for focus in recovery efforts. These include ecosystem restoration, post-fire soil stabilization, support for rebuilding with fire-resistant materials, and improved utility infrastructure safety. There's also a strong emphasis on providing robust support for displaced individuals and businesses, including mental health services.
That's crucial information. Lastly, Chloe, what do we know about the causes of these wildfires in Southern California?
According to recent studies, approximately 90 to 95% of wildfires in this region over the past decade have been caused by human-related factors, such as power line failures or arson. Only about 5 to 10% have been caused by natural factors like lightning strikes. This underscores the importance of human factors in fire prevention and the need for continued efforts to mitigate human-caused fire risks in Southern California.
Thank you, Chloe, for that comprehensive report on the ongoing wildfire situation in Southern California. We'll continue to follow this story as it develops.
You're welcome, Grace. We'll keep you updated as we learn more.
This has been Story 2 of 3. Our sources for this report include local authorities, the National Weather Service, and recent studies on wildfire causes in Southern California. Here are some other headlines. A series of ballot measures to legalize recreational marijuana failed in Florida, North Dakota, and South Dakota. This setback for advocates leaves the number of states allowing adult use at 24. In Florida, the measure received majority support, but fell short of the required 60% supermajority. Control of the U.S. House of Representatives remains undecided, with about 40 competitive races determining the balance of power. Republicans currently hold a narrow majority, with 220 seats to Democrats' 212. Democrats need to gain 4 additional seats to take control, but redistricting changes complicate their path. Missouri voters approved Amendment 3, adding a fundamental right to reproductive freedom to the state constitution. This reverses Missouri's near-total abortion ban, enacted after the 2022 Dobbs decision. Legal challenges are expected as advocates seek to strike down the current ban. A Votecast's comprehensive election analysis shows Donald Trump projected to win the presidency with at least 296 electoral votes. The economy emerged as a top issue for voters, particularly Trump supporters. Abortion rights and immigration were also key concerns. As Trump prepares for his second term, China is bracing for renewed tensions over trade, technology, and Taiwan. Trump has threatened to impose 60% tariffs on Chinese exports, which could significantly impact China's economy. Taiwan remains a critical diplomatic flashpoint, with Trump suggesting potential changes in U.S. support. We turn now to a concerning climate update. The European Climate Agency Copernicus has released new data suggesting 2024 is on track to be the hottest year on record for the second year in a row. Joining us to discuss this alarming trend is our environmental correspondent, Ethan. Ethan, what can you tell us about these findings?
Thank you, Grace. According to reporting from the Associated Press, Copernicus has analyzed data from the first 10 months of 2024, and the results are quite startling. They found that the average global temperature is 0.71 degrees Celsius higher than the 1991 to 2020 average, and 0.16 degrees Celsius warmer than the same period in 2023.
That's a significant increase. Can you put that into perspective for our viewers?
Certainly. What's particularly alarming is that 2024 is likely to be the first year with an average temperature more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. In fact, it could potentially exceed 1.55 degrees Celsius. This is a critical threshold that climate scientists have long warned about.
Why is the 1.5 degree mark so important?
The 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold is significant because it relates to the long-term goal set by the 2015 Paris Agreement. Exceeding this level could lead to more severe and irreversible climate impacts. Climate scientists, including Natalie Mahowald, Michael Mann, and Rob Jackson, have expressed concern that current greenhouse gas emission reduction goals may not be ambitious enough to meet this target.
Are we seeing any regional variations in these temperature increases?
Yes, we are. The Voice of America News reports that significant above-average temperatures were recorded in various regions. These include Europe, northern Canada, the central and western United States, northern Tibet, Japan, and Australia. India, for instance, experienced its warmest October since 1901.
What about sea ice? Has that been affected as well?
Absolutely. Arctic sea ice reached its fourth lowest monthly extent for October, while Antarctic sea ice extent was 8% below average, the second lowest on record. These findings underscore the widespread impact of global warming on our planet's ecosystems.
This news comes at a crucial time, doesn't it?
It does indeed. This information is particularly timely as we approach the UN Climate Conference, COP29, which is set to take place in Azerbaijan in 23 days. According to the Southeast Missourian, discussions at the conference will focus on generating funds for transitioning to clean energies and adapting to climate change.
How does the current political landscape factor into this?
The political context adds another layer of complexity to the climate crisis. This announcement follows the recent re-election of U.S. President Donald Trump, who is known for his skepticism of climate change and promises to boost oil drilling and production. This political backdrop heightens the importance of the upcoming COP29 discussions and the need for global cooperation in addressing climate change.
What do experts say is driving this relentless warming trend?
Carlo Buontempo, the director of Copernicus, emphasizes that the primary cause is the constant increase in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. While factors like El Niño, ±O, and volcanic eruptions contribute to exceptionally warm years, scientists stress that the long-term increase in temperatures is of significant concern.
It sounds like we're facing a critical moment in our fight against climate change. Thank you, Ethan, for breaking down this important information for us.
You're welcome, Grace. It's clear that immediate and decisive action is needed to mitigate the impacts of global warming and implement effective adaptation strategies.
Thank you once again, Ethan, for that comprehensive report. This has been Story 3 of 3 in our morning news segment. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.5, the Perplexity API. and the Google Cloud Text-to-Speech API. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.